ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Today we start recitation of the 18th juz from Surah Al-Muminun. And Surah Al-Muminun is a Makki surah which was revealed most likely in the middle of the Meccan period. And some Mufassirin have mentioned that this was revealed at the time when the Muslims were being boycotted and they had been pushed into this Shi'ab Abi Talib, where no one was allowed to interact with them, buy from them, sell to them, and it was a complete boycott which lasted a few years. They say that this is when this surah was revealed. When the surah was revealed, the Prophet ﷺ that morning made dua, Allahumma zidna wa la tanqusna. O Allah, increase our numbers, do not decrease them. Wa akrimna wa la tuhinna, grant us honor and do not place disgrace upon us. Wa a'tina wa la tahrimna, and give us from your treasures, do not deprive us. Wa athirna wa la tu'thir alayna, give preference to us, do not give preference to others over us. Wa ardina warda anna, and you make us pleased with whatever you have given us, and make us pleased with you and your decree, and you also become pleased with us. Then he ﷺ told the Sahaba that tonight 10 such verses were revealed that anyone who fulfills them, who completes whatever those verses are requiring them to do, will definitely enter into Jannah. And then he ﷺ recited to them the opening of Surah Al-Mu'minun. This narration is in Tirmidhi and Ahmad. So قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, verily the believers, the people of true belief, have succeeded. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. One of their first attributes is khushu' in salah. So their humility, their attention, their heart and their body are in a state where they are overwhelmed by the awe and the grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that makes them humble in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So their salat is on one side a display of servitude to Allah. It is a demonstration of complete servitude and being a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is also an urgent appeal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They ask their needs from Allah azza wa jal through their salat. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. These people are not distracted by irrelevant things. So laghu is that activity or that speech, those things which are of no use, they don't bear any fruit. So these people are turning away from them. And they are paying their zakat. And a few other qualities are mentioned. Amongst them is how they protect their honor, and they do not engage in sinful acts such as adultery and fornication. And as we will read in Surah Noor, which comes right after this, that one of the keys to doing that is by guarding the gaze. Khair. The surah opens up with قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. The believers have succeeded. They have obtained success. And the end of the surah utters something on the exact same lines. إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْكَافِرُونَ. The disbelievers will not attain success. The believers have obtained success. This is how the surah opens, and it closes with this: the disbelievers will not obtain success. There is another group of verses at the end, which the Sahaba radiallahu anhum used to read every morning, especially when going out on expeditions and in battles. And they used to recite, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ فَتَعَالَى اللَّهُ الْمَلِكُ الْحَقِّ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ رَبُّ الْعَرْشِ الْكَرِيمِ وَمَنْ يَدْعُو مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ لَا بُرْهَانَ لَهُ بِهِ فَإِنَّمَا حِسَابُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْكَافِرُونَ وَقُلْ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ وَارْحَمْ وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. These verses they used to recite in the mornings. So this is why the ulama have written that this should be included in the adhkar of the morning. Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi writes in Kitab al-Adhkar that this is something that should be read for the fulfillment of needs and necessities throughout the day. Now, the themes of this surah it opens up with the characteristics of the people of Iman. Then it goes into the stages of human creation, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this human being together. Then there is a bit of a detailed version of the story of Noor alayhi salam, and then what happened, how the flood occurred. After Noor alayhi salam, one of the first prophets, or the first prophet, was Hud alayhi salam, who was sent to the people of Ad. And then what happened with them? And then following that, Thamud, and generally speaking, the other nations that came after them. And prophets alayhi salatu wasalam, ثُمَّ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا تَتْرَى. The prophets alayhi salatu wasalam were sent in succession. One would come, then would leave, and then another one would come. And this, this state continued. Musa alayhi salam, Harun alayhi salam were sent. And Allah Azza wa Jal commanded these prophets that, O prophets, kulu min at-tayyibati wa amalu salihah. Consume what is pure and halal, what is good, and do good deeds. So this tells us a couple of things. One is that consumption of halal is a major theme in the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something minor. And Allah Azza wa Jal is giving this imperative to the prophets alayhi salatu wasalam, that eat from the good things, eat from the pure things, and do good deeds. So a lot of the acceptance of good deeds has to do with what we are consuming. If a person is not consuming halal, then it directly affects their dua, and it directly affects their good deeds. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu requested the Prophet ﷺ, O Prophet of Allah, make dua that Allah makes me mujabud da'wah. That whenever I make dua, my dua is accepted. I want to be like that person, that whenever they make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their dua is accepted. So, in that narration of Musnad Ahmad and others, the Prophet ﷺ told him, Atib mat'amaka ya Sa'ad. O Sa'ad, you purify your food consumption. Purify meaning you make sure that you're only consuming that which is halal and tayyib. So halal means that the substance itself is halal. Allah has made that substance halal, whether it's a meat, it's a drink, it's whatever it is, Allah has made that substance halal to consume. And tayyib means it is acquired through lawful means. It is not acquired through means that are doubtful, or methods of earning which are unfair. It has not been acquired through hurting or tricking, deceiving, gambling, so on and so all of those things that are unlawful in Islam. So then Sa'ad radiallahu anhu became extremely diligent about this, like other Sahaba were as well. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him mujabud da'wah. And in the books of Hadith and Sahih al-Bukhari and other books, there are narrations of the power of dua that Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu had. Yani, when he asked something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it came true. It happened right away. So the consumption is extremely important. وَعَمَلُوا صَالِحًا, and do good deeds, engage yourself in doing good a'mal. The Prophets alayhi salatu wasalam were called one ummah, one group of people, because they all preached the same message. They all preached Tawheed, Risala and Akhirah. They all invited Allah Azza wa Jal towards the same way of life. And even though the sharia between the Prophets alayhi salatu wasalam might have been varied, the technicalities or the modalities of worship, they varied. So what exactly the salat looked like, and what were the restrictions or permissions of salat, and what exactly siyam looked like, and what exactly zakat looked like, what amount and when, and so on and so forth. These modalities changed, but all the Prophets ﷺ came with the same set of beliefs. They preached the same set of beliefs, and they all actually came with the same set of worships. Every prophet came with Sawm and Salat and Zakat. Every prophet did. Every prophet came with a message of modesty and honesty, and similar things were made haram in the shari'ahs of all the Prophets ﷺ. And the importance of good deeds, and how people who are not doing good deeds but are seeing good results they should not be deceived into thinking that نُسَارِعُ لَهُمْ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ أَيَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّمَا نُمِدُّهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ مَالٍ وَبَنِينَ نُسَارِعُ لَهُمْ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ بَلْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. These people should not think that just because we've given them, and these are those who don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not abide by the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just because Allah has given them the gift of wealth or the gift of children, they should not think that Allah is hastening, Allah is rushing to do good things for them. No, this is a test for them. And rather, who are the people that Allah is rushing to do good for, and Allah Azza wa Jal is going to preserve their interests? They're the people who have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're the people who have iman and yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they're the people that have fear of reckoning with Allah Azza wa Jal. These are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to rush. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to rush to fulfill their needs and bring them good. Then, towards the end of the surah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being told, being instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that seek protection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from being included in the wrongdoers. Oh Allah, if you were to bring upon the punishment, إِمَّا تُرِيَنِّي مَا يُوعَدُونَ, if, oh Allah, you were to bring that punishment that they have been promised, they will be afflicted with. Rabbi فَلَا تَجْعَلْنِي مَعَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Oh Allah, at that time, don't include me among the wrongdoers. Who is being told to ask this dua? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it tells us that we should never have what the Quran calls amn from the adhab of Allah. We should never become content that no, the adhab of Allah is never going to reach me. I'm like this, I have these good deeds, these good deeds, these good deeds. If anyone is saved, in fact, the whole ummah is saved from the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of the presence of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The whole ummah is saved. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَأَنْتَ فِيهِمْ. Allah says, Allah is not going to bring a wrath upon all of them as long as you are present, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in dunya, if the adhab were to come, O Allah, don't include me among the wrongdoers. And in akhirah, also, O Allah, don't include me from amongst the wrongdoers. And this dua, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being instructed to ask. And seeking protection from hamazat al-shayateen. The subtle efforts, the subtle whispers of shaitan, how shaitan will come and incite someone towards doing something wrong. Hamazat al-shayateen. And this is why from the du'as of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and even when he was entering into his salat, when he was commencing his salat, one of the du'as of thana is that he seeks refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from hamzihi wa nafkhihi wa nafthihi. I seek protection from you, O Allah, in the incitement of shaitan, in the whispers of shaitan, in the thoughts brought to me by shaitan. And then what will happen to the people on the Day of Judgment? Those who did not present sufficient good deeds, then they will say, Oh Allah, now we've seen everything, so send me back. رَبِّ ارْجِعُونَ لَعَلِّي أَعْمَلُ صَالِحًا فِي مَا تَرَكْتُ. Oh Allah, send me back so I can do some good deed in that world that I have left behind. But إِنَّهَا كَلِمَةٌ هُوَ قَائِلُهَا. These are just words now. They have no meaning. There's no possibility of applying it. Once someone passes through the portal to akhirah, that's it. There is no returning for them. And then the outcome of those people who did not prepare themselves for that day. Then we have Surah An-Noor. Now, Surah An-Noor is a Madani surah. And this was revealed a little bit later into the Madani era. A little bit later. Probably around the 6th or somewhat after that from Hijri. And this surah serves as like a sequel. We talked about surahs being paired together. So this surah serves like a sequel to Surah Al-Ahzab, which will come up in a few days inshallah. So what had happened was in Surah Al-Ahzab, obviously there is mention of what happened at the Battle of Ahzab, but there were a lot of conditions that were created against the Prophet ﷺ in regards to his marriage with Zainab radiallahu anha. And we'll talk about that inshallah when we discuss Surah Al-Ahzab in a couple of days. So a great campaign was started, it was turned into a scandal, and he was attacked from all sides. And people used this as an occasion to create this big opposition against Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he had married the wife of his adopted son, who was not his real son. Khair. In this Surah An-Noor, there was also an issue pertaining to one of the wives of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that was Aisha radiallahu anha. So it's a very lengthy hadith in Bukhari and Muslim and other books, that she had lost her necklace, and at that time when they used to travel, they were coming back probably from the Battle of Bani al-Mustaliq. They were coming back, and she had lost her necklace when she went to relieve herself. And at that time the women used to travel in this hodaj. It used to be this covered kind of a saddle which was placed on top of the camel. So the whole thing would be lifted off when the lady wanted to get off, and the whole thing would be placed on. Aisha radiallahu anha did not weigh much. So when the Sahaba saw that yes, everyone is ready to go, they assumed that she was already in there. So they picked up this saddle and they placed it and they started moving. But Aisha radiallahu anha was busy looking for this necklace that she had lost. So when she came back, she found that the caravan has departed, and there was another Sahabi, Safwan ibn al-Mu'attal radiallahu anhu, who had been placed by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the rear to come and follow up, just in case there were any stragglers, somebody got lost, somebody had dropped something. So this Sahabi would be at the back, following behind the caravan just to check. And as he comes there, he sees Ummuna Aisha radiallahu anha sitting there. So right away, he covered himself and he said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And he had her sit on his camel and he walked her into Medina. When he walked her into Medina, it gave the hypocrites, the munafiqeen, a chance to stir up a scandal. And so they started a rumor about Aisha radiallahu anha and Safwan radiallahu anhu. Aisha radiallahu anha had absolutely no knowledge of this. And a great deal of time passed, and then she felt that people are changing. And when she was out with one of her attendants, going out in the evening to go relieve herself, as the women used to do, then the khadima, the lady who was with her, she said something about someone, and she said, why are you saying that about him? He's a good person. He's from the people who were, who participated in this and this and this. She said, don't you know what has happened? She said, no. And then when she told her, Aisha radiallahu anha, who was still very young at that time, she broke down. And then she cried for days and weeks. And then the incident continued, and the tension continued to build. And this became a major issue of the society at that time. It became an issue in which the whole community was really, really disturbed. Everything was turned upside down. On one side you had rumors, you had Muslims who did not want to listen to those rumors, you had people who kind of accommodated the rumors and they welcomed them, and you had people who were actively spreading rumors. It was a big mess, and the Prophet ﷺ had left it up to Allah Azza wa Jal. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed some verses from Surah An-Noor in which Aisha radiallahu anha was exonerated beyond any doubt, and very harsh words were used for those people that were involved in this, those people that stirred it up, and those people that accommodated it, those people that welcomed it, they catered to it, and they allowed themselves to listen to it. Instead of closing that door, that no, we are not, how could we possibly say anything about anything to do with this, anything to do with our mother Aisha radiallahu anha. The common streams of commandments and things are that both surahs give a great deal of instruction pertaining to marriage and women. Great deal of emphasis is placed on this, and many injunctions. This is where the injunctions of hijab are brought in, and the injunctions pertaining to separation, and not intermingling. And even if men had needed something from the houses of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they should ask from behind a screen. This was mentioned already in Al-Ahzab, and this was further pushed with guarding the gaze, and women being watchful of what they're wearing, even in their own houses. And those people that are attendants of the house, servants of the house, even how they are required to seek permission before going and anywhere where there is a woman of the household. So greater, you can say, framework, a more detailed framework of commandments pertaining to marriage, and specifically commandments pertaining to hijab, were brought in as the second part to what had already been implemented through Surah Al-Ahzab. The reason why I'm mentioning the whole story behind it is that the mafasid, the troubles that arise in society, Islam aims to stop the troubles before they happen. And the instructions that Islam is giving, these are not restrictions in and of themselves. That the idea is to be strict for the sake of being strict. To put restrictions for the sake of just pushing women into a corner. It's not about this at all. This is to preserve the honor, the respect of women and of households and of families, and to save society from getting embroiled into these kinds of issues. And if this is not done, then what happens is you either have a society where there is constantly some kind of issue, scandal, inappropriate dialogue taking place amongst people, or society eventually breaks down all of those barriers and they welcome all of this. Like what has happened in modern society, where those barriers have been completely broken down and it makes no difference to anyone who is doing what with whom. And that's something that Islam will not tolerate. So that infrastructure that's in place is for the sake of protecting the honor of women, the honor of their men, and the respect of the whole family. So these are some of the major themes. And the strict punishment for adultery is mentioned here, and also the necessity of bringing 4 witnesses. So 4 witnesses that have seen the man and woman committing the actual act of haram. Not 4 people who saw them together. Even if they saw them intimately close together, this is not 4 witnesses that will result in a punishment being implemented. People have misunderstood this severely. 4 witnesses testifying to the actual act means these people were doing it publicly. Otherwise, it's not possible to have 4 people. It's actually not possible to have 4 people witness it. That's why in the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and probably for centuries after, it never ever happened that 4 witnesses came and testified to something like this, because this almost never happens. 4 witnesses means that these people are not engaged in haram. These people are openly spreading and encouraging haram. They are doing this in front of an audience. That's what 4 people means. Otherwise, it's literally impossible to establish something like this. So that's one thing. And if somebody comes in and accuses someone, and they do not have those 4 witnesses, one person comes and says it, says, I saw them doing this. Well, do you have 3 other witnesses? If you don't, if this person doesn't, and he has dared to speak out against these 2 people, he gets a had penalty of 80 lashes. That if you did not have, then what should you have done? Kept your mouth shut. You keep your mouth quiet. So the idea is not to drag people in front of a qadi and have them punished. The idea is 2 things. That people who are sinning should be afraid of the consequences and never, first of all, never ever sin openly and publicly. And secondly, they should fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that what might happen. And on the other side, people should never ever dare to say something that would attack the honor and the reputation of another person, because they will definitely there's no 4 witnesses needed that somebody said this. You don't need 4 witnesses to establish that somebody accused someone. But you need 4 witnesses to establish what they were being accused of. So, and what if it's a husband catches his wife in some act? Of course, he's not going to go and look for witnesses. So what do? Then this is a muamala between those two. So those two have to come face to face in front of the judge, and they have to take these oaths. And if they both he takes his oath that, yes, I saw this and this and this, and I'm speaking the truth. And the 5th time he'll invoke the curse of Allah upon himself if he's lying. And she will also take oaths, 4 oaths, and on the 5th time she will invoke the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if she is lying and he's speaking the truth. When this happens, the qadi will say, look, one of you is lying. Absolutely. It can't be both of you can't be speaking the truth. But because the accusation is so severe, we're going to end this marriage. And then the marriage will be terminated. And that's it. So these are some very, very powerful and subtle commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are deterrents. And the other thing to keep in mind is that all aspects of the hudud, those penalties in Sharia that have a physical implication, there's some kind of a corporal punishment involved. Whether it's lashing or anything like that, these things are decided at the discretion of the government. The ruler at that time will decide which penalty is to be implemented and which penalty is not to be implemented. So these are discretionary. There is a serious element of discretion here. Okay? It could be that it is deemed necessary by the government, by the Islamic rulers of the time, that even a lesser punishment should have, a lesser crime should have a more severe penalty. Why? Because this is becoming openly rampant in society and it's doing a great deal of damage to people's lives and property. And it could be that they choose another way, and it could be that they become very, very strict in their process of gathering evidence. So there is a great deal of discretion that has been awarded to the rulers of that time as to how to implement it and when to implement it. Aside from this, generally speaking, rules for entering people's homes, taking permission before going into someone's house, and how that applies. The surah takes its name, An-Noor, from the passage, Allahu Nuru Samawati wal Ard. And this surah mentions the word Noor more times than any other surah. The word Noor is mentioned 7 times in this surah. So that verse, which requires a tafsir in and of itself, is basically depicting the battle between good and evil, lightness and darkness, or guidance and misguidance. And that Ayatul Noor, or the ayat of Noor, where the Noor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Noor of the heavens and the earth. What exactly does that mean? And what is the darkness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about in those verses? Qualities of the believers, many of their qualities are mentioned, and one of them is that they are in the masajid and they are praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are people who may have businesses, worldly occupations, but their worldly occupations and their businesses do not make them negligent of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and salat. Rijalun la tulhihim tijaratun wa la bay'un an dhikrillah wa iqamis salah wa ita'iz zakah. These are such men that their tijara, their worldly affairs, do not distract them or do not deviate them from the remembrance of Allah, from establishing salah, from paying zakah and charity. And they have this constant fear and awareness of akhirah. And these are some of the major themes of this surah. Respect for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is a passage which speaks at length about the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how it is a hallmark of believers that when they are called towards the obedience of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they do not hesitate. They do not place place barriers between them and Allah and His Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, and how they are always ready to attend when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam calls them, how they're always showing their willingness to obey whatever it is that Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam tell them. So there is a great deal of discussion on this also in this surah. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us the ability to understand and reflect and implement the teachings that apply to us. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa